All right. Hi, I'm Judge Tony Wallace with County Court of Law number 4, and this is Voices for the Voices. Good evening, and first of all, thank you all so much for inviting me. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, so I love talking about it, and I love that there is a group of individuals who are interested in it, and I'm excited about the dialogue that we're going to have after my presentation, because I have some questions for you guys. So, my name is Tony Wallace. I am the presiding judge for County Court of Law number 4. I've been on the bench for 7 years. I was first elected, I was appointed in 2015, and so I served as the inaugural judge for County Court at Law number 5 in 2016, and then I was elected as the judge for County Court at Law number 4 in 2018, and then I was re-elected in 2022. Tell your parents I'll be on their ballot in 2026. So, love my job as a judge. I love what I do. Our courts are general jurisdiction courts. Just really quickly, that means we cover a variety of topics, including criminal for adult cases. We do juvenile criminal cases. I do civil cases. I do probate cases and mental health commitment cases. So it's a really busy court. But within my court, I have a specialty court. I actually have 2 specialty courts, and girls' court is one of them. We used to call it girls' court when we first started it, but we changed the name to the core program, and that was intentional because we wanted to be inclusive of all genders. So it started off as girls' court, and we were funded by a grant that said it could only be girls. And so once we were able to come out from underneath that grant and that funding, we were able to change the name to the CORE program. And CORE basically stands for Creating Opportunities Through Rehabilitation and Empowerment. So it's an acronym. We try to stay true to this mission statement. And I won't read it word for word. You can see it on the screen. But a little bit of background about how we got started with the girls' court. So before I was a judge, I was a prosecutor, and I worked in the Fort Wayne County DA's office, and I was there for about 5 years, and of those 5 years, I spent about 2 years as a juvenile prosecutor. So I did all juvenile criminal cases. And I can remember as a prosecutor, we had one young lady that we knew was a victim of human trafficking, and nobody knew what to do with her. You don't want to victimize a victim, right? But you also want to hold her accountable if she's committed an offense, but you also want to be sensitive to her experience, her trauma, and what she's gone through. And so I can very distinctly remember dealing with that as a prosecutor in the DA's office, and not really knowing how to tread that case. Like what should we be doing? How should we address it? So so that was back when I was a prosecutor. And at the time, in County Court at Law number 3, Susan Lowry was the presiding judge. And Judge Lowry decided we're going to have a girls' court, and we're going to figure out how to help these girls that we know in Fort Bend County that come through the juvenile justice system that we know are trafficking or being trafficked, or who are at risk for being trafficked. And it was brand new at the time. And if I'm being honest, the sheriff at the time was completely oblivious to the fact that human trafficking was taking place. I've been in several rooms where he stood all 10 toes down and said, there is no trafficking in Fort Bend County. And every single time I made that face, like, seriously? Like, and he would say it to any room, any crowd, anywhere. Luckily, he's gone, and now we have a sheriff who's very smart, and he understands that trafficking absolutely exists in Fort Bend County. So you know, we weren't getting any help necessarily from law enforcement in Fort Bend County, but we knew that we needed to do something, and so we created this girls' court, and it was born out of trying to figure out how to help these girls that we knew were being traumatized and being victimized, without further victimizing them by making them a part of the juvenile justice system. They were already in the system because of whatever offense they had been accused of committing, but I'm not crying because I'm sad. My eyes watering. But we needed to find a way to address them and make sure that we got them the help that they needed. So Judge Lowry started the girls' court in 2016, and she was amazing. She put together a team of individuals from various different departments. In today's world, we would call them stakeholders, right? So she had stakeholders from the district attorney's office. She had stakeholders from the juvenile probation department. She had stakeholders from within the juvenile probation department, like one level deeper, because we needed to address like therapy and counseling and things like that they would need. So she had stakeholders to represent that portion. She had stakeholders from the criminal defense bar. She had defense attorneys that came in and helped to represent the girls once they were inducted into the girls' court program. DA's office, juvenile probation, defense attorneys. I'm trying to think if there's a group that I missed. That's it. I mean, the girls and their parents, right? So she created this girls' court, and in 2016. And at that time, I was actually on the bench in Court 5. Follow along, all right? You got to follow the bouncing ball, right? So I started off as a DV prosecutor, as a juvenile prosecutor in 2015. 2016, I'm on the bench, and Judge Lowry starts girls' court, right? And part of the reason why we started girls' court, and I will never forget this girl's name. I can't say it out loud. I probably could at this point because it's been a while, but we'll just call her TH for short. And TH was a raging drug addict, and she would cycle through the juvenile probation department, and they knew what was going on, right? I'll never forget, they had to go we had her at a placement and like right outside of Kendleton. She ran away. They went to go pick her up. I promise you I'm not crying. They went to go pick her up, and when the juvenile probation officer was driving her back to the detention center, she's like, "So TH, what's going on? She was high and sad and all of that stuff. And so juvenile probation officers like just making conversation with her. She's like, "How did you get the money? Bless you. How did you get the money for the drugs?" And she's like, "Well, these drugs don't buy themselves, so I did what I had to do." And that's the mentality, right? And she was one of the first young ladies that we had in our girls' court program. And she was one of the ones that she was tough, but she was tough because she had to be. At the age, by the time she made it into our system, I believe she was either 15 or 16, but she told us that at the age of 14, she was already living on the streets. She had already been, just basically had a pimp, but because she was 14, her job was to watch the babies of the pimp's other prostitutes at night, so those prostitutes could go out and work at night. So she would watch their babies at night, and then she would go to work during the day. So so never forget her. She was just a special young lady, and at the end of the day, when she finally finished the program, I would love to say that she went on and turned her life around and made something of herself, and but I can't. I couldn't even tell you where she is to this day, because she got off probation and we never heard from her again, right? And that's indicative of a lot of the girls that come through our program. If you see on the slide, we've had 70 plus girls that have been referred to the core program over the past, we have to change that. It's not 7 years now, it is 8 years. And I wish that I could say that of the 70 plus, like 80% of them have turned their lives around and they're doing wonderful. I can't. And unfortunately, that's the reality of that lifestyle. And we have found that, thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry.
I forgot my tissue in the car.
I'm trying to find tissue, but
that's fine, thank you. But yeah, the reality is that that lifestyle is, it is what it is. And when those young ladies and young men are subjected to that kind of treatment, it creates what they call trauma bonds. And trauma bonds are real. They're not just like a concept or made up or something that we just kind of talk about as a buzzword. Trauma bonds are real. And as an example of that, there was a young lady in my court who was in the core program, and she was on the run. A lot of the young ladies in the core program are on the run. They run away a lot. And when we finally caught up with her, because her dad was very instrumental in helping us find her, we finally found her, brought her home, put her on restrictions, said you can't have social media, you can't be on your phone, you can't be on the iPad, if you're on the computer at home, you have to be supervised. Like, we put all these parameters on her, and within like 2 or 3 months of her being home, she was in front of me again because she had violated those terms, and she had gotten on her dad's iPad and was trying to communicate with her pimp. And so we brought her in, and I'm, fussing at her in court. I'm like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, you know what the restrictions are. You're not supposed to be doing this. I don't want to put you in detention, but if you violate these conditions, I'm going to. And she stood in my courtroom, I'll never forget it, and looked me in the face and said, well, I just wanted to check on him. Check on him? I was like, first of all, he's a grown man. And you're a little girl. I mean, you're a teenager, right? So what do you need to check on him for, right? What is it about, that relationship that you felt like he needed to be nurtured and cared for? And so I was like, did he come and check on you while you've been in detention? Has he checked on you at all? But that was indicative of what a trauma bond is. It is that relationship, that connection that is not easily broken. And so when you're dealing with victims of human trafficking, the common question is, why don't they just go home? Why don't they just leave? Why don't they just go back to, the safe place where they know they're going to be cared for? And there's a lot of different answers to that question. But one of the main things is the trauma bonds, because even though the person that is quote unquote caring for them is mistreating them, they're also being fed a lot of misinformation. Well, if you go home now, you're damaged goods, nobody wants you anymore. Your parents are going to be so ashamed of you. Nobody's going to be around you. All your friends, they don't want to talk to you anymore. That's like the verbal, right? But then there's also just the physical, and sometimes they're being induced with drugs, and they're being held captive by constantly feeding their drug addiction, right? Like TH, like these drugs ain't gonna buy themselves, and I wanted them, and so I did what I had to do to get them, right? So there's a lot of different scenarios, and of the 70 plus girls that have come through our core program, there's been 70 plus different stories about how they got to where they are and what kind of care they needed and what kind of resources and services we could provide for them to help them. And that is the goal of our program. We focus on individuals that are already on probation, and they do an assessment of them at the Juvenile Detention Center. I'm going to call it JDC for short, so if I just start talking in acronyms, just say, Judge, we don't know what you're talking about. So they do an assessment of them at the JDC, and based on that assessment, they determine whether or not this individual needs something more, right? Whether or not they are either at risk for trafficking, or whether they have been victims of trafficking. And I'm showing you this slide to kind of show you the two different categories. We call them tracks, but they're really the two different categories that we divide the individuals in the core program into. And so one is for if we know that this child has been trafficked, then we place that child in a certain category. And then the other category is if they're at risk. And what does at-risk behavior look like? It looks like running away. It looks like breaking your curfew. It looks like not going to school. It looks like maybe you are going to school, but you're not going to class, right? So there's a lot of different factors that we take into consideration when we talk about the at-risk category. But those are the two main categories. So they're at risk or they definitely have been trafficked. And why we separate them like that is because of this screen, right? Because we do counseling, supervision, and special programs, and those are kind of the building blocks of the core program. That counseling is specialized, it's customized. We have hired for the core program our own licensed therapist. She sees other kids in the JDC, but she is the core program's licensed therapist. And so anybody that's in the core program gets access to her exclusively. And she does intense counseling. They do a series of sessions with her, and we talk about what happens. Well, we don't talk about in detail what happens in the sessions because that's covered, that's privileged, right? That's confidential information. But what I can get from that therapist is feedback on, she's not opening up. She's not really being honest about what's happening. She's really not in a place to really be forthcoming, so let's give her some more time. So we really try to just make sure that we're monitoring the counseling, but I'm not like hands-on, like sitting in the room like, we're not talking about today. What are we talking about today? So that's one factor or one pillar of the program, and then the other is supervision. And as you can imagine, supervision is complicated, right? Because when you have an individual who is living in that lifestyle, they're used to being pretty independent, right? Coming and going as they please. And so when you start talking about what that supervision looks like, whether it's with a parent or with a guardian, it starts to get really messy. And I say that from the standpoint of having to tell a parent the supervision that you're providing for this child is inadequate. And so we're either going to have to remove this child from your home and place them in another facility, or you're going to have to be tougher on this kid, right? You're going to have to be a parent and do the hard things that parents have to do. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, a lot of the underlying charges for the participants in the core program is, what do you think? What do you think is the most common charge that these girls, and I'm just gonna say girls because we don't have any boys in the program right now. What do you think? What do y'all think? Just thinking about like what kind of charges, what kind of offense would you think is the most common offense?
Probably prostitution.
Nope.
Is it about drugs?
Nope.
Robbery, like petty theft?
Nope. These are all good guesses. It's assault family violence. Because guess what? They're trying to get out of that house. And so if somebody's stopping them, then they're going to attack the person that's in front of them, right? Or because they've got a drug problem. And so trying to have a rational conversation with them is it's impossible, right? So that is the most common charge that we see is assault family violence. And when we take that into consideration, again, trauma bonds, because your average teenager, I try really hard not to say a normal teenager because I have teenagers and they're not normal. None of y'all are. But so I will just say the average teenager is not attacking their family members, right? The average teenager, although you may get angry, upset, disappointed, emotional for whatever reason, you're able to regulate those emotions in a way that's appropriate. So if you've got a child that's lashing out at the very people that are taking care of them, that's a problem in and of itself, right? So we deal with the whole child. And that kind of goes into the third pillar of our program, which is special programs. And special programs can look like a lot of different things. I really enjoy just asking my girls, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, I've got a girl right now that wants to be an interior designer. I'm like, great. Let's figure out how we can connect you with some people that are already doing that so that you can figure out how to make these small goals and set small goals working towards the ultimate plan, which is for you to be successful. And I'm always very cognizant of using that word successful with my participants because success looks different for everybody, right? So for the 8 of you that are sitting around this table, your success is not gonna look like his, and yours isn't gonna look like his, right? It's gonna be defined based on you, based on what you're good at, based on what you apply yourself to. And so I try to customize these special program services that we give each one of the girls so that we can continue to, or at least try to help them to empower themselves, which goes back to our mission through rehabilitation and empowerment. So if we are able to do that while we are rehabilitating them, we are able to empower them, then hopefully that percentage of the ones that go on to do good things will continue to increase, right? That's our program structure. Some of the other things that we do with special programs is education. So whether that's GED, right? And let me tell you, like up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I was not a fan of GED. I was like, no. Anybody that's coming through here, we're not just gonna like sign them up for a GED. I wanna make sure that they get their high school diploma and that they finish high school. But I have softened on that stance.
What is GED exactly?
The graduate equivalent diploma.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The GED program is actually one of the better alternatives for some of my girls. Because you think about it, if they've been on the run and they've fallen behind in school, and she's 17, but she only has enough credits to be a freshman, then what good is that to force her to go to school where she may or may not stay all day? Instead, let's test her for the GED and see how well she does. And I have been amazed at some of the girls that when they test, because you have to take 3 main tests to get your GED. But when they do like the little pre-test, the preliminary test, they are knocking it out the park because they're actually really smart. And so I have softened my stance on the GED program. I'm all for it because it gives you that foundation building block to then go on and do whatever you want to do next, to train for whatever your career is that you want to pursue. So that's one of their special programs. We also do for the young ladies that are still in school. We give them all the tutoring that they need to help them with whatever classes that they need. We hook them up with a mentor, a community mentor, because that relationship, that connection is always really good. Somebody that's not your mom, not your dad, not even related to you, but wants to spend time with you and wants to pour into you. And so we encourage the mentor relationships as well. I'm trying to think of the other special programs. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but we do a series of different customizing for each one of the girls. Talked a little bit about the counseling. So remember I said we have a bunch of stakeholders, right? January is designated as Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which I'm sure you guys probably already know. And so in January of this year, the core program and staff, we hosted a human trafficking awareness seminar right here in Fort Bend County. It was very well received. We opened it up to anybody that works with juveniles because we wanted to make them aware of like what are the signs to look for, what are the facts as it relates to human trafficking in Fort Bend County, what is CORE doing to help alleviate and to address those problems and those issues here in the county. And I could not have done it without my CORE miracle workers. And so just quickly, I'll go through and point them out. Do I have? Oh no, I got a little sticky. Okay, no, is that you or me?
That's me.
Okay, so up in the top left, her name is Angela. That's our licensed therapist. She's amazing. Tony Collins is our education resource specialist. She's actually leaving us this week, and I'm really sad. Sean Hubbard is one of my defense attorneys. Next one is Leah Williams, and Leah organizes and coordinates our mentors. Next to her is Jennifer Adair. Jennifer is actually Angela's boss, so she is with the Juvenile Probation Department and their psychology department. Susan Bearden is over the special programs department in the Juvenile Probation Department, and she's amazing. Like if we've got a girl who's like, she can't get to court because she doesn't have a ride, I call Susan and Susan's like, all right, I got an Uber card for her. Where do you want me to do it? You know, how do you want me to make the arrangements? So Susan's amazing. She's always like Johnny on the spot with whatever we need. Next to her is Sandra Salas, and Sandra is the deputy chief for the juvenile division in the DA's office. And so she's one of the prosecutors that works with us. Right below her is Radhika Dave. Radhika is our event planner extraordinaire. Anytime somebody has a birthday or is going out of town or moving or leaving, Radhika plans all of our little parties for them. But Radhika is one of my defense attorneys as well. And then next to Radhika, is Selena Alanis. So Radhika, Selena, and Sean are my three defense attorneys. Why do I need three? Because each girl has a unique need, and each one of these defense attorneys has a special skill in being able to really adapt to a girl. Selena is my Spanish speaker, so we love her because anytime we get a Spanish speaker, I'm like, Selena, that one's yours. And she's like, I got it, Judge. All right. Next to Selena is Jetty Abraham. Yeah, Jetty. Jetty is one of the prosecutors as well. She's in the juvenile division of the DA's office. And then that's me. And then Jasmine Dotson was my juvenile probation officer. So Jasmine has the caseload for all of the core cases. Jasmine's awesome. She's amazing. And because she's awesome and amazing, she got promoted. And so since we've taken this picture, Jasmine has left the core program. She's still with the probation department, but she is in a different department. In a different division now. And now we have a young lady named Ashlyn Torres, who is a rock star. I love her so much. She's young and she's got a lot of energy and a lot of really good ideas. So Jasmine was replaced by Ashlyn, who's not in this picture. Christy Roy, that's one of the other programs. Christy Roy is also in special programs, and she helps all of our kids find jobs. And so if I've got a girl who wants to work, Christy will help her get a job. And it's not just as simple as like, well, let me just go to HEB and fill out an application. They don't know how to fill out applications. They don't know how to turn in an application. They don't know how to do a job interview. Like some of the skill sets, we call them soft skills, that you guys have already, just because of the environment that you have grown up in, maybe the household that you've been in, you take that for granted and you think, oh, well, everybody knows how to fill out an application. Like, that's easy. It's not. It's hard. And sometimes there are barriers before you can even apply for a job, because what if you don't have an ID? You can't apply for a job without an ID. You can't take GED classes without an ID. So Christy and some of the other people in that department do a really good job of just kind of laying that foundation and getting them in a place where they can take the next step. And then Andrea Alvarez. Andrea is actually Jasmine's boss in the juvenile probation. She's the supervisor over the probation officer that is assigned to court. Okay. So what does it look like? How do we how do we operate in court? I'm glad you asked. So once a girl is referred to our core program, I can get a referral from any of the 6 county court judges in Fort Bend County. And once they are referred to the core program, we transfer their case from that court into court 4. And the reason we have to do that is because I'm going to reassign the attorney. I'm going to be monitoring the case for the entire duration that the child is on probation. And so we have to transfer it so that I have the authority to do all of those things. Once they plead into the core program, which is done through a series of paperwork, there's one particular piece of paper that is very important, and that's called our core addendum. There's a lot of rules on that core addendum, but the highlight of them is that they are not permitted to be on social media at all. They are not permitted to have devices unsupervised at all. So imagine that, not being able to have your phone, not having access to TikTok, IG, I would say Facebook, but y'all know that's only for old people, so not Facebook, right? But that's part of the requirements for them while they are participating in the core program. So they have to sign all that paperwork, we plead them in, and we, as a group, the core staff, we meet twice a month. So we meet at the beginning of the month and we talk about all the cases. We call it a staffing meeting. We talk about all the cases. We talk about what's going on with the girls. Ashlyn, who's my probation officer, has updates on everybody and what's going on. And then we meet again on the last Wednesday of the month. And in that meeting, we're doing a staffing, but it's a briefer staffing meeting because on the last Wednesday is when the girls actually come to court. So they come to court once a month and they check in once a month to see how you're doing, what's going on. When you talk about anything, if there's been any violations, we deal with that. I primarily try to keep it light, and depending on the stage of their case, of their actual probation, depends on kind of what we talk about. We have quite a few girls who come through the program who they're on probation and then they commit a violation, so their probation is modified and or extended. And so when that happens, when their probation terms are modified and or extended, sometimes that looks like they have to go to a placement facility, which is usually like a secured residential facility in another town. We send girls to various residential facilities all over the state of Texas. We have sent girls to a facility in Omaha, Nebraska. And I can't wait because, well, we did send one girl a few years ago to a facility in Arizona, and I just recently went and toured the Arizona facility again, and they are ready for another Fort Bend County kid. So I don't like to send kids far away like that, but it's a really nice placement, and so I'm looking forward to being able to find the girl that's right for that placement. So we check in with the girls even when they're in placement. Right? I have a girl right now that's at a placement in Nueces County. We don't just drop off our kids from Fort Bend County at these placements and we're like, all right then, peace out, holler, see you when we see you. We go back and we check on them. 2 people that aren't pictured in this picture are my placement probation officers, Trey Crum and Angela Stewart. And they are on the road 2, 3, 4 times out of the month going and traveling to see kids and check on them in all the different placement facilities that we have them. Nueces County, Grayson County, some are in Dallas, some are right outside of Dallas. If it's close enough for them to drive, Angela and Trey are on the road to go check on these kids. So we check in with the girls once a month. We talk about what they need, what's coming up next. We encourage them. I admonish them if we need to. And the goal is, like I said, to rehabilitate and empower them, give them what they need in order to be successful. It's rough because sometimes you just feel like you're not getting through. And I've had this conversation I used to be one of the defense attorneys in the girls' court, and then I became the judge. I don't think I told you how that happened, but it's difficult because you don't see the flower, right? So what we're doing on this level is we're just planting the seeds, right? We're identifying where these girls need help and then giving them what we can and pouring into them what we can while we have them, because they're not going to be on probation forever. But we're planting the seeds. And so the sad part is when you plant a seed and then you water it, what happens? Does it like sprout out of the ground immediately?
Takes time.
It takes time, right? And so we may never see the flowers that bloom from the girls that have come through the core program, but we just have to trust that we've done and given them enough that that they will be successful, that there will be a flower at some point, someday. It's challenging. There's some months where I'm just like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. It's over. But then I'm reminded that yeah, this is hard work, but it's hard for a good reason. Parents don't understand what trafficking looks like. It is literally happening under their noses. This wasn't a girl that came through our program, just a story that I know of for sure that was happening here in Fort Bend County. This girl was going to school every day, coming home and leaving in the middle of the night every night. She was being trafficked. Her parents had no idea and would not have known because she was leaving in the middle of the night, right? They were going to bed. But it is not, one of the things I tell people about trafficking is it's not like Taken, you know, that movie Taken, where, I mean, there's some element of that, right? Like, let's be clear. But when you're talking about on a local kind of familial level, trafficking looks more like girls who are 16, 17, 18 grooming other girls. And so, yeah. And so, you know, that's happening in our classrooms every single day. It's happening at the lunchroom. It's happening at volleyball games and basketball games and football games. It's not like this kind of seedy, like, perv looking guy, you know, in the corner, the back alley, you know, sidling up to a girl and like, hey, you know, come get in my van. No, it is an 18-year-old sitting next to a 16-year-old at a volleyball game and saying, hey, you know, why don't you come party with me this weekend? And, you know, my friend's gonna show you a good time and you're gonna love it. And the 16-year-old who wants to be accepted says, okay, sure. So, I mean, it's not, you know, it's very common. And I don't say that from the standpoint of like lowly common. It's just, it's happening every single day, right? What's mind-boggling, and I will never wrap my head around this statistic, but it is very real, is that it's happening with family members, moms who are pimping out their daughters, because that's the lifestyle that they know. And so when the daughter comes of age, she's like, come on, you gonna earn some money too. Because if you think about trafficking, and this is one of the things that, and y'all are old enough, I think I can not, I can be real. When you think about trafficking, it's profitable, right? If you're a drug dealer, where are you gonna get your drugs from?
Like a bigger drug dealer.
Right. You gotta find a distributor, right? I watch Power, so I know how that works, right? You gotta find a distributor, and that distributor is getting his drugs from somebody else. So you're constantly waiting on the drop, right? And then when you run out of drugs, what do you gotta do?
You gotta buy more.
You gotta go get some more. You gotta re-up on your inventory, right? That's your commodity, that's a commodity, that's a commodity. They come ready-made. Already ready to be put out and sold for what they can provide as they sit here right now. And let's be clear, y'all are the same way. It doesn't matter, right? So why wouldn't I, we're recording, right? Okay, so why wouldn't a drug dealer, not Judge Wallace, but why wouldn't a drug dealer say, you know what, forget these drugs, I'm gonna start selling people. Because I can always find a girl or a young man who fits somebody else's fantasy, right? And convince them to work for me. It's a commodity, it's a business. It makes a lot of money. When Super Bowls come through Houston, Texas, do you know how many women, girls, men, boys, they ship in from other cities? It happens. It's happening every single day. And so, it's not going anywhere. I love that we have kind of shifted the narrative and stopped saying prostitutes and really made it more of a human, because it's easy to distance yourself and say, well, she's a prostitute, she decided to do that, he decided to do that. And for some of them they do, but they're being trafficked. And so when you call it what it is, commercially and sexually exploitation, that's what it is.
What are some things that you did in the past to prevent trafficking? And is there anything that worked and is there anything that failed?
I think the biggest thing that works is the stings, like the sting operations. And those are actually not done through my court. Those are done through the district attorney's office and in collaboration with law enforcement agencies in Fort Bend County. But there have been several trafficking sting operations that have taken place over the past, since probably the past 4 years. I'm trying to backtrack to see when Eric Fagan got elected as sheriff.
When the DA in 2019, we started to really see that.
Yeah.
We started to see this thing.
Yeah, because Brian came in when I came in, but he wasn't getting the backing until Eric became the sheriff, and then it was like, balls to the wall, let's go. So yeah, I think the best way to prevent it, because if you think about it, a sting operation is undercover for a certain amount of time, and then they, arrest a series of people, and so it sends a message to the community, like, you can run, but you can't hide. So.
Do you believe that there are any policy changes that could be put into place, or that should be put into place?
So one of the main kind of battle cries when we're dealing with trafficking is that people say, well, you shouldn't victimize the victim. And so it's difficult to balance that, because if somebody commits an offense and then we later find out that they are being trafficked, or that they were being trafficked at the time, we can always adjust, but she still has to suffer kind of the indignity of having that arrest, right? So I don't know how you change that in policy. I think the best way, or some of the best ways that we've tried to fix it, is just on the back end, just either reduce the charge or dismiss it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's that's a common refrain. It's like you're victimizing the victim, right?
What prompted the creation of CORE, and what impact have you seen it make on the participants that go through the program?
So I talked a little bit about how it got started, and that was just basically us identifying that there were these young girls who we could tell were victims of human trafficking that were coming through the juvenile detention center, and so wanting to address them and being able to really provide them with the best response to their situation was kind of what born how the Girls Court was born. What was the second part of your question? What's been
impact.
successful? Yeah, the impact. It's hard to tell, and on a good day, at the end of a girl's probation, she'll stand in court and she'll tell me, or she'll tell us as a group, because everybody's there, thank y'all. Thank you for being hard on me. Thank you for caring about me. And those are the ones that that, or you hope that is going to have an impact on. But there's no guarantee, right? I had one girl who came through the program. We sent her to 2 different placements, and she finally successfully completed a placement. She came back home. She finished the GED program. I went to her GED graduation. I was just like, I'm so proud of you. We're like hugging, and it was so great. And her family was there. And less than a year later, she had an adult criminal case in my court. And I was just like, are you kidding me right now? And when she had to come to court, she was crying. She was like, I know you're so disappointed in me. I'm so sorry. And I was like, you're living your life, hun. I mean, I can't, I can't sit here and say that I'm not disappointed. But, I also gotta let you be you. And so, you have moved on from juvenile cases. Now you got a big girl case. Now you gotta put your big girl panties on. We're gonna figure out how we're gonna take care of this case for you, And I mean, she had an attorney, and so I was telling her attorney, she came through our girls' court, and so yeah, sometimes you get that example of we tried, and she's still got to make her own choices.
Can you share any memorable outcomes that you've witnessed from who have gone through the core program?
Sure. Every girl that has come through the program, when I go back through and I look at their files, and my interns this summer had a huge project where they compiled all my notes from all my cases over the past 6 or 7 years. I can remember almost every girl's face. I can probably, if you give me enough time and just kind of like sprinkle some facts for me, I can probably recall, the kind of services that we gave her, what she needed, or what her backstory was, all of that. So there's not any one that stands out, because if you say a name, I'm gonna go, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Some of the women that are on the core staff, we've been around together for the longest time, and so we laugh and joke about some of the girls that have come through, and some girls, I can't say her name because I don't want to say her name, but I kept saying her name wrong like every time she came to court, and so finally she was just like, my name is, and I was like, okay, yes ma'am, I got you. Never gonna forget it. I'm gonna pronounce it right from now on, right? But yeah, we definitely we have some memorable ones, but there's not any one particular one that stands out. They're all just so special and unique in their own ways, and some of the ones that we had such high hopes for that just fell a little bit short, and some of the ones that really shocked me, and I was like, oh, you really got it together, like you figured it out, so you cracked the code, so it happens.
What do you believe is the most difficult part of your job?
So for me, from where I sit, the most difficult thing is not wanting to hug every child that comes through my court. I have a very hard stance. I will not cry on the bench, and I will not hug from the bench, because I just think it sends a bad message, right? So that's probably the most difficult, and that's just because the human in me has a connection with the human that's in front of me, even when they make me angry, even when they're doing things that I know they know they have no business doing. It's still me saying to that other person, you're at the end of the day, you're still a human being. We got to figure out how we can help you.
How can the community get involved in supporting human trafficking survivors and raising awareness?
So the first thing is that the community has to understand all the variations that human trafficking can take, and that's a difficult ask, right? Because you're asking people who by all accounts are busy, right? They got jobs, they've got families, they've got mortgages, they got bills to pay, they got to go buy gas, they have life, and you're asking them to pause and say, hey, we want you to care about this section of the population. And they're like, I'm just trying to put food on the table. Like, I don't have time. And I get that. So just to increase the awareness, you don't have to be invested in helping all human trafficking victims, but to be aware that it's happening would be amazing. Because guess what? When you walk into the gas station, like I said, you gotta go get gas, right? When you walk into the gas station and you see a young lady that's in here that won't even make eye contact with you, that looks scared, that looks like whoever the guy that she's with, like, that's not a match. Like, that doesn't look like her dad. That doesn't look like, that something's off about that, right? If you're not aware that human trafficking is going on, you walk right past that young lady, pay for your gas, get in the car, and go home. But if you are at least cognizant of it, then you're gonna see her, and I'm not looking at you because you're a trafficking victim, but I'm just looking at you. But you're gonna see her, right? And you're gonna go, something's off about that. And you're gonna ask a question, right? And you're gonna ask her, hey, do you feel safe right now? If you don't, like, blink twice, right? Or, meet me over here by the chips in a few minutes and let me know if you need some help, right? You're going to notice that. But if you don't know it's happening, you walk right past her, you miss that opportunity. And so I think just educating people and letting them know that it's happening, so that when they do see something, they'll say something.
And I have a question. Do most of the victims that you find, are you able to find the trafficker as well, or is it no?
They're not giving up that information. I mean, they might, right? We've had a few situations where we've had some girls who are in very unhealthy relationships, right? And the guy is clearly older than her. Is he a trafficker? Is he her pimp? Maybe not. Maybe it's just an inappropriate relationship. But they're not gonna give up that information. They're not likely to. Let me put it that way. Okay. Some of them will, but they're not likely to.
Have you encountered that in court, that they've given it up?
Yeah, I mean, we've encountered it from the standpoint of, some varying degrees of it, right? So we've had some young ladies who, we've gone to do a home visit and she's down the street at some older guy's house. And we're like, why are you over there? And, she's not really telling why, but if we can get the name of whoever this older 34-year-old man that she was with, oh, you best believe Jetty Abraham's going to run their name and try to figure out, is he on probation? Is he on parole? Is he supposed to be around young girls? If we can just kind of get that kind of threshold information, that might tell us something. But does that mean he's a trafficker? I don't know. So being able to at least get the information, and what we do with it after that, we're sometimes limited, but sometimes, we can make a difference.
What is the biggest thing, in your opinion, that the county could do to prevent human trafficking in the first place?
Let me just say, I think that, like I said, in the past 4 years since Sheriff Fagan has taken office, the shift in the focus on trafficking, coupled with the efforts from Brian Middleton in the District Attorney's Office, and let's be clear, Bridget Smith-Lawson in the County Attorney's Office, because some of those cases have a civil component to them, have in the past 4 years made huge changes in the landscape for human trafficking. What more can be done? I think we can't take our foot off the gas, right? We can't get complacent and just go, oh, we solved human trafficking in Fort Bend County. Yay us. Let's all go home and have ice cream, right? Like, we have to, because just like I said, those sting operations have happened. The community is aware that we're aware that you're out there. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna adapt. They're gonna make it harder to find them. If they're smart, they're gonna change the way that they traffic these young victims. And so we have to be ever evolving and adapting as well. And like I said, the human trafficking task force that exists in Fort Bend County is one of the top notch. And so I have no doubt that we are all doing what we can as we move forward and progress to continue to be impactful.
How do you believe the upbringing impacts? How do you believe that the upbringing affects the child going into trafficking, and how do you believe that you can combat that?
So
If they have like a poor upbringing.
when you're dealing with human trafficking, the act itself or the offense itself, if you really peel back the layers, it really is it's addressing a void in somebody's life, right? A need that person has, and so when you're talking about the victims, they are missing something that their trafficker is providing for them. And that's that trauma bond, right? That's that connection that is hard to break, because whatever that trafficker is providing, that victim is going to continue to feed off of. So when you talk about ways that you can really try to combat that, it is to provide some type of way for that person to get that void filled. One of the things that we talk to people that work in schools about is, pay attention to those kids that are really quiet. Pay attention to those kids that look like they just kind of need a little extra, because sometimes those are, they become prime kind of. And I'm saying that every kid that's quiet or that needs a little extra becomes a victim, but it's just focusing and finding that opportunity to provide what that person needs.
You mentioned that many girls get into more trouble after their probation. Why is that, and how can we help that issue?
I wish I knew. It would save me a lot of drama. Again, it's kind of the whole person approach, and the young lady that I talked about at the very beginning, she was at the placement facility. This was after the whole the drugs weren't going to buy themselves. So we put her in another placement facility, and she had a violation. She like attacked one of the staff members there. So we brought her back, and I'm like, what is going on? What happened? And she was like, she came at me wrong. And I was like, right? I made that same face. I was like, what does that even mean? I said, tell me what happened. And so, long story short, she was standing with another young lady, and I think the staff member was either trying to get them to either go inside or follow some type of instruction, a directive that was given. And the staff member gave the directive, and TH didn't move. And so the staff member like walked up on her and was like, did you hear what I said? Or I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly like what went down between the two of them. But TH was like, she came at me wrong. And I was like, but isn't that her job? Like, she's a staff member. You're supposed to listen to what she says. She was like, no, I was going to do it, but she didn't have to come at me like that. Okay. So when you've got that mentality, right? How much easier is it for me as a judge or the probation officer or the counselor to take 2 steps back and just say, all right, what's the best way that we can resolve that? Instead of still coming at him like, do what I said, do what I said, do what I said. It's like, okay, you don't like the way I said it? All right, let's talk about it. You know, so just being able to adapt and really see a person as a human being and really just try to help them to recognize how they can be better, and then somehow motivate them to want to be better is kind of the cornerstone to the success. If the girl doesn't really want to be better, or she can't see a path to getting better, she's not likely to do it.
Okay. What challenges have you faced in court trials during human trafficking cases?
So we've never had a trial for any of our trafficking, any of our core program. The most complex proceedings that we've had have been have been contested dispositions. So like I said, when they're on probation and they violate their probation, the state will file a motion to modify and extend their probation. And if the state makes a recommendation that the girl agrees to for the modification, then done deal, we fill out the paperwork, it's done. If the state makes a recommendation for the modification of the probation and the child does not want to agree to that, then they have the right to have a hearing. And so I have had a few contested disposition hearings where the young lady did not want to take the state's offer for her probation modification, and we've had to have a full-blown hearing with witnesses and testimony and all of that for me to make a decision about what the outcome is going to be.
So even as a prosecutor, did you face any issues in trafficking cases or
No.
in your prosecution? Are there any challenges faced within the program with the girls when it's hard to get their life back on track after those experiences and charges? Yeah.
I mean, it could, it manifests in different ways for different girls. Sometimes it's a roadblock in terms of the parent. Right, where the parent is like, I'm not doing all that driving. I'm not bringing her up here once a week. Y'all are gonna have to figure something else out. And so we've had to adapt and say, okay, well, we'll go and do her counseling at school, or if they are in the juvenile justice school that we have. There's one in Arcola and there's one in Rosenberg. If they are enrolled there, then we'll go and do their counseling there so that we can alleviate the parent from having to worry about transporting the child. So there's all kinds of different roadblocks, and they look different for every child. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's got to be about that child wanting to get better, wanting to receive the help that we have to offer. Because if they do, then they're going to motivate their parents, right? To get them to wherever they need to be.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, just really a comment. When you did your girls' court presentation, Judge asked me to attend, and he asked me to work this year on human trafficking. Really just a campaign to always have that word on his social media, to always be saying that. So we post monthly, usually on the 11th, to share something. And then I don't know how, I really got lucky to get y'all. We got assigned by drawing. Just like you picked a number, we did too. So I got human trafficking, but I'm going to tell you that your group is amazing in what you do. And I'm a parent of a daughter, and after I was in your course and then I looked into it more, I asked her, has anything like that ever happened? Has she ever felt tricked? And she said, always. Someone is always trying to pull something on you.
Yeah.
Your classmate, your friend's brother.
Yeah.
She said, always.
Just depends on whether you're wise enough to recognize it and strong enough to resist it.
And I did ask her, how did you know to do that? And you know the truth? She said, I knew you would get mad.
But that is indicative of the relationship that you have with your daughter. And so yeah, because not every girl has that relationship. And so they fall prey to it because they don't have a strong mom who's like, girl, you better not.
Yeah, mess up.
You better not, you know? But and then there's some parents who give it their all, and they do everything that in their power. They do everything that they know to do, and the girl still makes her own decision.
I do want you to know from my perspective as a parent and as a citizen of Fort Bend, you do amazing things. I have watched you since 2015. You do amazing things, and to me that you still have joy in it, you have a gift.
Thank you.
Because that's got to be so tough. Because truly, and I say this to you as kids, it's really no fault of your own, because you're our kids. But unfortunately, you have to grow up and be smart enough and be alert, and some people don't get that. And so what you do is it's amazing, because if you, even the kids that fail, I know you've made a difference, because in the moment they were with you, you cared. And that's what we all need.
That's what we try to give them, at least for the time that we have them, and you know the short amount of time that we get to interact with them. I try for that to be the overriding message. I'm going to hold you accountable for what you're doing. I'm going to make sure that you stay on track. But at the end of the day, I just want you to know that I care about what happens to you.
And to me, that's very obvious, Judge.
Yeah,
I can see it. Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.